break the burnout cycle. This is something that I am seeing in so many wellness spaces. And on the surface, it sounds really helpful, right? But as a neurodivergent person, it doesn't always feel supportive. To me, it feels like pressure. Like if I were just doing better, I wouldn't be so tired all the time. And when we see things like this, fix your burnout messages, we see these things out there. The first thing we need to remember is that we are living in a world that thrives on burnout. Our society sells it as a lifestyle, and then we call it ambition, we call it progress. And there's no easy fix for that. So if you're tired like me, it is not your fault. I'm Tanya, and welcome to Wholly Divergent. This is a channel for neurodivergent humans who are done trying to fit into systems that were never made for them. So let's talk about why this messaging, break the burnout cycle, doesn't really land for us and what might help instead. When people say break the burnout cycle, it suggests that all we need is better habits, something like a solid morning routine. There's always a new app for that, right? And we'll feel better if we just try harder. But what I've learned is what happens when we do all of these things and we're still overwhelmed, we're still exhausted, we're still not feeling better. And that's when it starts to feel like shaming and blaming. Like the wellness world is saying, look, I gave you all the tools, and if you're still struggling, then that's on you. But for so many of us as neurodivergents, burnout isn't just a cycle that we fall into. It's like a chronic state that we live in. And Western culture demands constant output, right? Constant availability, 24/7. And society never builds in enough space for real recovery. And for neurodivergence, the cost is even higher for us because we don't bounce back after a busy week. We crash and then we crash again because the input never stops. If you're nodding along with me, go ahead and subscribe, because this space is really about grounded, real solutions made for how you actually function as a neurodivergent, not how you're told to by neurotypical wellness spaces. So let's talk about what burnout really looks like for neurodivergent people like us, and why so many of us can relate to this topic. I have some stats for you. In 2020, a study in Autism Journal found that 79% of autistic adults experience burnout. And this is not the kind that goes away after just taking a weekend off, 79%. Another study in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders describes autistic burnout as a long-term state of stress and exhaustion caused by overload and lack of support. So this has nothing to do with bad choices or things like poor time management. People with ADHD are more likely to deal with executive dysfunction, obviously, emotional depletion, and decision fatigue. A 2022 study showed that nearly 60% of adults with ADHD experienced chronic exhaustion. Also, over half of us struggle with sleep disruption, overstimulation, and daily overwhelm. It's about processing too much for too long. And masking is the effort it takes to hide our natural behaviors and to pass as functional. This drains our energy in even the most neutral and everyday situations. And most of us have been doing this since childhood. That alone is enough to burn someone out. So when we say we're burned out, we're not saying that we need things like taking a nap or taking a hike in the woods for an afternoon. We're talking about full body depletion, nervous systems fatigue, executive function breakdown, emotional disconnection. And here's what that can look like in your daily life. These are some of the things that happen to me. You freeze in the middle of just the smallest tasks, things like doing laundry, sending those emails, making dinner for yourself or your family. And it's not because you're lazy, it's because your brain and your nervous systems are just too full. Maybe you cancel plans, and it's not because you don't care. It's just because your body is already at its capacity and you can't take on anything else. Something else that happens, you can lose access to your words, to your motivation, or to connecting to your emotion. Everything just kind of flatlines. You can get sick more often, and sleeping more doesn't always help, because even when you rest, you don't always feel restored. And then the world is telling us, the neurotypical world is telling us, just take the weekend off, go for a walk, sleep in on Sundays. And I really, really wish that worked for me, and you probably do too. And here's the thing, most of the wellness tools that we see, they are not made for us. They are made for neurotypical people, built around consistency, structure, predictability. All of these things do not always align with how our brains and bodies actually work as ND people. So when we try the same advice and it doesn't work, we end up feeling defeated, sometimes embarrassed and shameful. And again, instead of break the cycle, what if we just really started naming what our reality is? Our reality is our world lives in burnout. So let's stop blaming ourselves for being tired all the time in a world that's always demanding more from us. We need to really think about how we can create plans that actually work for how our brains and bodies function. So for neurodivergent people, healing burnout can look like maybe letting your routines shift with your energy, follow your energy flows, taking rest time without guilting yourself or shaming yourself, adjusting your plans without explaining yourself, and just saying, you know what, I've had enough today and I'm just checking out. And if you're new here to the channel and you're new to me, this is what I do. Wholly Divergent is about creating a space for people like us who want to feel better and not pretending to be someone that we are not. To talk about this stuff honestly and to figure it out together. So here are a few things that are really helping me lately when I feel like I am really like stuck into burnout. The first thing I do is I give myself one afternoon a week just to read for fun. Quiet, reading a physical book is huge for me. Making dinner, just quieter and slower, and saying no to other things and making this a priority. I'm trying, I'm not always successful, but to keep my mornings as tech-free as possible. And then also, when I'm doing something, when I'm working on something, I give myself permission to kind of check out of it and then come back to it later when I feel like I have more energy. Remember that we are in a culture that normalizes burnout and it markets it as success. The world profits from our burnout. It praises our exhaustion and it calls it productivity. And this is not just happening to us, right? As neurodivergents, it's happening everywhere. It's the system we live in. And there's no easy fix for that. So it's not your fault that you're tired. It's not on you. And all we can really do is learn to care for ourselves inside the reality that we're living in. We can show up for ourselves in small, real ways the best we can every day. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if this helped, and share it with someone who needs to hear that if they're feeling burned out, it's not their fault. And that our healing as neurodivergents doesn't have to look like everyone else's. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.